job interview is one of the most anxiety-provoking situations most people can find themselves in, even when they go to plan. But what happens when you have your worst interview ever? Our guests share their worst interviews ever in the hope that you will take something from their mistakes to have a more successful interview outcome. Some of the stories are horrific and some are just downright embarrassing. Let's join our host, Kevin O'Reilly, the interview skills coach with over 25 years experience in the fields of coaching and recruitment. Let's welcome our guests to the show.
Today we have on the show Gordon Gough, an international business consultant and former CEO of one of the largest enterprise groups in Northern Ireland. His extensive experience supporting entrepreneurs in their business journey for over 25 years. He has also sat on hundreds of interview panels, so his insights will be invaluable to you, the listener. Hi Gordon, how are we today?
Doing well, Kevin. Yes. Nice to see you again.
You too, sir, you too. It looks like it's lovely and sunny where you are today.
Yeah, in Portadown today, Kevin. Yeah, the sun's shining, so what's not to like? Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much for coming on, Gordon. I know you're a very busy man and you have a lot on your plate, as of most days. But I think with you being on this show today, the insights you're going to bring from your experiences in the past are genuinely going to be life-changing for our listeners. You have so much experience, and I know myself when I have engaged with you that I learned so much from you. And I would like to publicly thank you for that because it's really made a huge difference to me as a person and my business. So Gordon, thank you very much.
Oh, pleasure, Kevin. That's great. Hopefully my insights will be valuable to some of your listeners. Absolutely.
Oh, I think they will, Gordon. I think they will. But listen, before we get into that, okay? I would love for you to share something that not very many people know about you. You know, maybe a hidden talent, a hidden skill, something maybe that people would go, no way. Gordon doesn't do that.
Oh, well, I'll give you a couple, Kevin. Actually, some people might know this. A lot of people probably don't. But believe it or not, I cycled from John O'Groats to Land's End a few years ago. Yeah, and fantastic, 900 miles. We did it for a local charity, my son and I, and it was just amazing. Um, really tough cycle. Couldn't do it now, Kevin, but I was a bit fitter and younger a few years ago, so that was absolutely amazing. Probably from a business perspective, not many people know this, but I do coach people for job interviews and for board positions. I tend to really just do it for close friends that I know. But with my success rate's probably in the 90+%. So I'm thinking I should maybe monetize this little skill, hidden skill that I have. But no, joking aside, no, I do that for a number of people that I know, and for quite a number of them, it's been successful in terms of the job or the board position they're going for.
Gordon, I think this is a conversation you and I might have to have off screen here. Might be a little bit of a collaboration. I think that that would be fantastic. Thank you very much for sharing that information. That cycle sounds awful, to be completely honest, from my point of view, but it sounds like it was for a really good cause.
Well,
How many miles did you say?
900. I think it's slightly over 900 miles, but yeah, my knee was recovering for years after, and in fact, I got a partial knee replacement in the last 2 years. So I think I can trace it back to the time of the cycle. But it was amazing to do it, and we still talk about it. It was super. Just one of those things. When I look back on it now, I think, did I really do that? So yeah, it's great, and it rained every single day. A bit like the weather in the UK and Ireland, you can never depend on it. But during that cycle, it rained every single day. But there you have it.
How long did it take you to do it, Gordon?
We left John O'Groats on the 1st of July, and we arrived in Land's End on the 11th of July. So it was about 10 years ago. So It was amazing.
Wow. It sounds like you enjoyed the experience. but I don't know why you would put yourself through it unless it was for a really good cause, which I know it is.
Yeah, we
So
raised £12,000 for a local cancer charity, so it was really, really worthwhile. It was emotional when we finished it as well. So, but yeah, one of those life things that we look back on, and hopefully my son, when he gets a little bit older, he'll say to himself, "Did my old fella really do that?" So
well, it is. It's a great sharing experience, isn't it? A great bonding
yeah,
experience for you and your
yeah,
son. And as you say, there's a story there that potentially comes up every sort of Christmas, every knee operation,
that's it.
every chance you get to bring up the cycle.
100%, absolutely, absolutely, Cam.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Gordon, for sharing that with us. Now, just on reflection about looking backwards, with your experiences and with the amount of different organizations you've worked with, there's bound to be one of those moments that really stand out for you that you're so proud of that you think, yeah, that was me. I had a real impact on that, or that you started something that is now a different animal completely. Would you mind sharing that with us?
Yeah, of course, Gavin. There's been so many highlights on my journey, and it's difficult for me, I think, just to pick a specific example of a project. The highlights have been the people I've worked with, and I think particularly the international work that I've done, particularly in Eastern Europe, and especially in Poland and Hungary and the Czech Republic. Um, the legacy there in terms of the small business support that I was involved in, particularly around loan finance, many years further down the line to see some of the ideas that I was involved in, the projects I worked on, to see, an impact and a difference being made in that part of the world is that's probably been the highlight, Kevin, for me. Just the impact across different countries where, going back when I was working in Central and Eastern Europe in the late 90s into the early 2000s, Northern Ireland was an exemplar of small business support. We did a lot of things right, and it was a privilege to be able to share that with emerging countries in Central and Eastern Europe at that time, and to see many years later when I went back as a tourist and met up with some of the people I'd worked with, just to see the difference in, you know small business support at that moment in time to what it had been, maybe a decade earlier.
Projects like that are definitely life-changing for the individuals that are involved, not just for you, but those people who gain a life from what you have imparted on them. And I know that you were a mentor of mine within my business, and I know I've gained so much from you. I can only imagine what these other folks have gained in the time that they've had with you as well. Because it is, for me, again, it's very life changing. It's a different way of looking at things. We don't know what our blind spots are, so it's hard for us to change them unless
Yeah.
someone is going to coach you along that path. And I thought that you have a lovely demeanor about you that made it really easy for people like myself to happily share those
No,
fears, share those worries.
that's very kind of you, Kevin. No, absolutely, and I know I like making a difference and an impact, and it's been a real privilege to travel the world, but primarily in Central and Eastern Europe. And I still go back as a tourist to places like Budapest and Krakow and so on to visit, and just a lovely part of the world. One of my favorite spots I have, as you know, done some business consultancy in Australia and in North America, but I always come back to Europe and the stuff we did in Europe, and I was part of a team, and it was great just to make that difference at that time and to impart some of our knowledge in Northern Ireland and the UK, where we were viewed as pretty mature country in terms of small business support. So it was great to be able to help emerging countries. So it was excellent.
It is. It sounds wonderful. Now,
But
I do understand as well that we can't always have wins in our past careers, and there must be one of those moments where you've come to a point, one of those pivotal points where you thought, "Wow, this is
yeah,
this is really low for me. I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do." And you might have to reach out yourself sometimes for a little bit of support and help.
Uh,
Can you share an example of something like that?
I give you a couple of examples, Kevin. I like anyone who's had a varied career like me, although I'm probably a little bit different to today's generation. I didn't have that many career moves, but I did make one in the early 1990s that wasn't for me. It was coming from the private sector into a public sector body. It just wasn't for me, and I knew that very, very early doors and thought, crikey, I made a mistake here. It was a big public sector body. It just didn't fit with me. I was looking to make decisions quickly and get things moving along. And in some public sector organizations, it can be, understandably so, with public money, a little bit slower to get things moving. But anyhow, I I stayed in the job for 2 years, which was my shortest period in any job in my career. I didn't like it. I found myself really coming up against challenges where things weren't happening, and weren't happening quick enough, and I was getting frustrated. But you know what, Kevin? Those 2 years, and I often tell people about it, whilst it was the wrong career move for me, the wrong job, what I learned in those 2 years was absolutely immense in terms of managing conflict. I've been dealing with trade unions quite a bit and negotiation. It really took me, I often say to people, it was a pivotal moment in my career where it took me from a fairly green, naive middle manager. I learned a massive amount in that wrong job, if we can call it that, for 2 years. That took me up a number of gears in terms of tenacity and resilience and so on. So wrong job, but learned so much from it.
I think that's normally the case, isn't it? But it's not the case for everybody. Not everybody learns from their
Yeah,
mistakes. Not
yeah,
everybody learns from that adversity. But I think when we sort of peel back, what you're saying is that when you made that move into the organization, potentially their values didn't match yours, and almost immediately that's what you felt as soon as you get in.
yeah,
And what I tend to find with a lot of my own clients is that they don't want to jump straight back out again because they don't want to feel like they've made that huge mistake.
yeah,
So they try to make things work. But regardless of how hard they try to make it work, when the values don't match, when your organization values and culture doesn't match your own personal values, it's never going to work.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that period, that shortness of period that you said that you lasted, and you used those words, you lasted for 2 years. It sounded like, yeah, absolutely, it was a great experience for learning, but you had to last. It wasn't easy for you. It was a bit of a struggle, and I think that's where values really don't
yeah,
always align, and so it doesn't work for a
yeah.
company.
And there's a bit also, Kevin, I think there is probably embarrassment. You feel, gosh, I had a nice job and I had a good job, but I knew I wasn't going to the private sector in sales, international sales, but I knew it wasn't going to be a job for life. And around about that time, there was an emphasis on recruiting private sector managers into the public sector. And I'm not driven by salary, but the salary was significantly more than I was earning at that stage. But I just felt it was time for a change. But it was the wrong change for me. And there is a feeling of at that time of embarrassment and, oh gosh, what have I done? But yeah, then you kind of think, got to try and make a go of this. And as I said, it did, give it the best part of 2 years. But I knew it was going to be a short term job. But I tried to make as many changes and be as impactful as it could within that period of time. And it did get some good results, but it was never going to be a long-term job for me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think again, if we're sort of pull this back towards that sort of the values that potentially you had and didn't align with the organization, there's bound to be a time when you've sat on that interview panel and you've looked at an individual and thought their values don't align with ours. What sort of values would you look for in a potential candidate in general?
Yeah, within the confines of, job interviews, there's a competency-based application form. Typically, you have criteria and scoring mechanisms. So you've got to treat every candidate absolutely fairly and squarely. But looking beyond that, because interviews there's an element to see a potential employee right in front of you, and kind of the values that I try and get from that, Kevin, and try and see is honesty and straightforwardness. Those are the kind of um, values that I like to see in a candidate. And any interview panels that I've sat on have been trying to see from the questions that they've been answering, is there an honesty and a straightforwardness about this individual?
And sort of how can you pull that out of them with regards to the honesty? Is that them owning up to something they potentially have made a mistake with? Or is that
Yeah. So although people can answer questions, at times you've no absolute way of knowing whether it's a full truth that's being told. But yeah, there's questions around maybe what's the worst mistake you've made and how did you own up to it and so on. But I think beyond that, Cam, what I try and see is just how they answer the questions. Is there a straightforwardness and an honesty? Are you seeing the real person as opposed to maybe someone who clearly is putting on an act, and it's like a theater performance. I just like to see an individual who you think to yourself, yeah, they're answering the questions that they did the research, but there's a straightforwardness and an honesty coming through that I want to.
it sounds like you're talking about authenticity,
Yeah,
being your authentic self and
yeah.
not putting on that performance. And I think that authenticity comes through with individuals when they actually really want the job.
Hmm.
When they really want the job, and what I mean by that is it's not that they need the job, but they want the job because it aligns with their values, it aligns with their goals, it aligns with their work-life balance.
Yeah, yeah.
There is that you can almost tell, and I know you've been doing this quite a long time, as probably a little longer than I have, but you can tell when someone isn't being truly authentic to themselves because it comes across like a very poor performance.
Yeah, no, you can, and things have changed in my journey over the years, sitting on panels, and being an interviewee, but certainly sitting on panels and chairing interview panels, things have moved over the last 10, 20 years. We've seen the rise of competency-based applications, and how you conduct the interview, I think has changed dramatically, and probably for the best over the past number of years. Back to when I started out in my career, and I was maybe, on interview panels for the first time. It was unstructured, and to be honest, a lot of hiring decisions were made on gut feeling and stuff like that, which sometimes worked brilliantly, other times didn't work at all. So I think within reason, Kevin, a lot of the checks and balances that are part and parcel of the interview process and job applications at the moment are a good thing. But still beyond that, you've got to try, and that's what I try and do when I'm chairing panels or if I'm on a panel. You try and bring that authenticity through, as you said, and what I termed, straightforwardness and honesty.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure you've said on some panels where you've you've had two candidates almost identical in every aspect, and you've had to make some sort of a decision. Talk us about talk us through about how you would do that. These two people have scored exactly the same in the competency questions. They have this similar, if not same, experience. They have the same qualifications because they went to the same school to do the same thing. And I know that that is few and far between, but there is always that decision to be made. There's always, it's either this person or this person.
Mm.
How do you make that decision?
Again, when you look at it nowadays, you're conscious that the vast majority of people will have put a lot of time and effort into the interview, preparing for it, arriving for it, and through the interview process. And it's incumbent on interview panels to ensure that they give everyone, a fair crack of the whip. And in the scenario that you've described there, yeah, I mean, you go back through the questions, how the panel have scored the questions. If there's very, very little between the candidates, if I'm chairing a panel, we'll do that. We'll go back through all of the questions. We'll ask for comments from the panel members. We'll see maybe in some of the additional questions that were asked to all of the candidates, did someone maybe just show a little bit more insight into the job role, or a bit more knowledge about the organization, or tell us something that just maybe was a clincher, that maybe given that slight competitive edge in there for the candidate that we would offer the position to. But it's not easy, Cam. It's not easy where you have a really close, two candidates where you can very, very, very difficult to separate them. I do remember in the past being on a panel in that very same scenario where you couldn't separate candidates, but one of the candidates in their closing remarks, for want of a better word, talked something about, they used like 3 or 4 C's: capacity, commitment, confidence. Just the way it came across as a panel, we just felt they've nailed it. That was the bit that just was the differentiator.
It's weird that you say that it's a rhetorical device called the rule of 3, and that's used throughout lots of speeches because it's memorable, and you still remember that to this day. So that's maybe a really good little lesson for listeners when you get that opportunity to ask a question. Maybe it's not just asking the question. Maybe it's making a statement at the end. Maybe it's that final selling point. Because you know yourself, as and when you get into the job, you can ask the question about holidays, you can ask the question about salary, you can ask the question about annual leave, etc., etc.
Yeah.
It's, for me, during an interview, it is not the time to do that. It's a waste of an opportunity, and you should be taking every opportunity because it's a very short period of time.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I do understand now that interview processes are becoming longer as opposed to shorter, but it's still a short period of time that you get in front of someone to change them, or to, what's the word I'm looking for, to persuade them that you are the right candidate for the job.
I used it myself. I mean, I've given an example where I was chairing the panel that day, but in one of my latter jobs, job that I was successful in applying for, I used that technique at the end of the interview where, when it was over to you for any final comments, I used that kind of technique to really nail what I had said around, like, again, it was something around capacity and capability. And yeah, I think it's a bit of a tip I would give to people. I'd said at the start of the interview that, I do coach kind of close acquaintances and friends on jobs and board positions. And I do try and say to them to leave the interview with a really solid closing statement.
Yeah. That's actually a bit of a psychological trick as well there.
Yeah.
People remember what you say at the very beginning, and they remember how you finish. In the middle, it's a little more difficult. So it's called recency and agency. So you leave them with something to hang their hat on at the end.
Absolutely.
You really open with impact, and then you close with impact, so the people will go away and go, wow, that was brilliant. And that could be the difference between you getting the job and you not getting the job. You may not have answered the questions exactly as they would like. However, given that little opportunity, you can really hone in on potentially what they're looking for and show your authentic self, because that's the only thing you can do when you're making that statement at the end.
You can. There's nothing worse than, if you're on the panel and you're asking a candidate any final questions or queries, if you don't get anything back, it's a bit deflating at the end of the process. So I would say that the people that I'm coaching, just have that at the very end of the interview, just summarize, typically using 3 very memorable phrases just to summarize and bring everything together if the opportunity affords itself, which generally it does.
Absolutely. I would completely agree with that. Completely agree with that. Now, I know that all interviews don't always go to plan. And as a panel member, when you're sitting there, there's bound to be those things that you look or you feel or you hear and you go, no, no, definitely not. What sort of 3 red flags would you think you have that are a definite no-no for candidates?
I think when I'm in a panel, Gavin, and it comes across as fully scripted answers, I kind of think, well, you're not being yourself. That's You've done your homework. You're just regurgitating stuff that you've phrases and catchphrases to bring into the interview. So fully scripted answers, lack of eye contact, and that can be an issue for some people. You've got to take into account nerves and all of that. But if there's not good eye contact, I get a little bit unsure about that. So I think fully scripted answers, lack of eye contact, and exaggeration, where you clearly know the candidate is exaggerating their capabilities or a project that they've been involved in, or the answer they've given to something doesn't correlate with what you have in the application form in front of you. I just think, oh, they're exaggerating. That doesn't sound right. Those would be kind of red flags within the context of obviously the set questions in the interview and the whole process that has to be consistent for every candidate. But those are 3 things that make me go,
And when you hear those potential red flags within an interview, do you potentially poke a little further, or do
yes,
you
I
just
would.
go,
Oh,
no?
no, well, no, I would. I would. If it was blatant and it didn't, maybe a case study that the candidate was giving that didn't absolutely match with what the detail in their application form, of course, it would probe a little bit more in a professional and pleasant way and say, that's very interesting. I noticed you mentioned that in your application form. Though you've given a bit more detail here. I would kind of, yeah, I would probe. I would probe where I think there's clear exaggeration in what the panel's being told.
Yeah. And I think again on that sort of the flip side of that, there's bound to be candidates that are completely memorable to you because of something they've did or something they've said and really went above and beyond. Do you can you recollect any of those sort of examples or times when that has happened when a candidate has been above and beyond?
Yeah, there'd be few. There's not one specific candidate that stands out, but there's a number of candidates where I've been on the panel where their knowledge of the company or the organization is just maybe better than the panel members who work in the organization or the company. So you really think there's an individual has lifted the bonnet, has really dug deep around the company, has downloaded the company's accounts, has asked questions around the accounts. Um, yeah, there's been a lot of memorable ones where I've been blown away by candidates. The extent of the homework that they've done, which has absolutely shone through in the interview process. Um, yeah, there's a number over the years I can think that, and it's always been around that, Kevin. It's always been, just the extent of knowledge around the company and the organization. It's been apparent in the questions that they've asked, and that always sits really, really well with me.
Yeah, and I think there's an argument now from recruiters that, believe it or not, it's not important to know anything about the organization that you're going into. This is what the trend seems to be in certain sectors. However, I would like to contest that ever so slightly because I work in many sectors. I believe it is not just the research that they do, it's the behavior of doing the research that is important more so
Yeah,
than what they can remember and what they can know about it. Yes, absolutely. They can, when they get into the organization, they can dig a little deeper and understand that. But it's that initial doing the homework, putting the effort in. To me, that says, well, if you're going to do that for the interview, you're more than likely going to do that when you're in the job. You're going to
Yeah.
put the effort in, you're going to put the energy in, you're going to put the time in, and you're going to really be a person of interest for me sitting on that panel. I'm a great believer in people are what they do, not what they say they'll do. So just even that act of doing that research,
Yeah. It
that's
shows, yeah,
important.
it shows conscientiousness and a real desire to know about the company or the organization. And, to me, if someone has really, gone to that extent, I expect all candidates, I would take a viewpoint. If I'm going for an interview, I'll do my homework. I'll do thorough homework into the organization. If for no other reason to ensure, you touched on at the start of the interview, that it aligns with my values and my vision. So, that's an obvious thing to say. But yeah, if it's an organization you kind of feel I'd like to work there, well, you're going to want to do your research. You're going to want to have questions ready at the interview around the organization that you'll want answers to. So no, absolutely.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much, Gordon. Well, we're gonna change the pace ever so slightly. We're gonna go into our quick fire round.
Uh-huh.
So I'm just going to ask a question, and the very simple answer to the question is yes, no, or pass.
Okay.
Okay.
Uh-huh. Surprise at the end of this, Gavin.
There's there's not. There's not. But you can go away feeling much better that you answered all of these questions, Gordon. How does that for a
That
lovely
sounds great.
prize?
That
Yeah.
sounds brilliant. Yep. Uh-huh.
Okay, we ready?
Yep. Go ahead.
Okay. Is it acceptable to wear pajama bottoms at a Zoom interview?
No.
Is it okay to bribe the interviewer?
No.
Is it wise to ask the interviewer for a selfie together at the end?
No.
Should a candidate smile during the interview?
Yes.
Should you answer the first question with a dramatic pause for effect?
Pass.
Should women wear high heels to an interview?
Pass.
Is it acceptable to ask the interviewer how much they make?
No.
Should you high five the interviewer at the end?
No.
Should a candidate swear during an interview?
No.
No. Is it acceptable to bring your mum to the interview for moral support?
No, but you can have her outside in the car.
Okay. I know you're laughing, Gordon, but I ask these questions because these are questions I have been asked by clients.
Very good. Okay.
Okay. So these are actual questions. And I find some of these to be, different depending on the sector,
Yeah.
different depending on the person, and different depending on the level.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it is always good to get a bit of an insight into different individuals and who come from different sectors as well. And I'm sure that'll really help some of the listeners think, oh, yeah, I should really smile. This isn't torture, or at least I could pretend it's not torture and smile through the interview.
I do remember interviewing someone for a job many, 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 many years ago, and as she was getting up to leave, her father entered the building, and he, I think, in his visual contact with me, it was almost a threat that you better give the individual this job. That one just springs to mind many, many years ago.
Gordon, did she get the job?
Can't remember. Hand and heart, can't remember.
Actually, that maybe I'll add that in as an additional question. Will
Is it okay
threats
to have your
work?
father come in at the end? Yeah.
Yeah, will threats work to getting the job or making a different decision? Okay, Gordon, thank you very much for that. The whole reason that we're here today, Gordon, was to answer the question of your worst job interview ever. Now, you can answer this question whether you were sitting on the panel as a panel member or you were the interviewer themselves. Now, Gordon, over to you. Tell all of us all about your worst job interview ever.
Yeah. So I was on the other end of the desk, Kevin, and I'm going back a long, long time. It was my second or third job, so I'll not age myself by putting the date on it, but it was a long, long time ago when I was being interviewed for a sales position. I think if I can remember correctly, and there were a couple of guys who were interviewing me, and it was one of those desks you could see underneath the desk, and one of the guys had his legs stretched out, and I could see two massive holes in the soles of his shoes. And of course, I started to giggle. And the more I giggled, I couldn't control myself. And I could then feel the heat rising within me. And it was a disaster. I mean, I did compose myself and then answered whatever question was being put to me. And then the guy would stretch his feet out again. And all I could see was these two round holes in the soles of his shoes. And it's just like then it became a nervous laugh, and the whole thing was a disaster. And I couldn't wait to get out. I did answer the questions, but I often wondered when I left that interview, the guys were probably thinking, did anyone know what he was laughing at there? So,
That would be extremely off-putting.
so I didn't
That
get
would
the
be
job. Surprisingly, I didn't get that job. But
What that is a complete shock there, Gordon. That you
uh,
laughed the whole way through a job interview. Nobody knew what you were laughing at, and you didn't get that job. Complete and
I
utter
think I'll put
shock.
a caveat in. I didn't laugh the whole way through the interview, but there were sporadic outbursts which I just couldn't control. The more I tried to control it, it was just one of those things. I was young and naive, and I would like to think I would have handled myself a lot better nowadays. But I do remember that, and it was embarrassing. I couldn't wait to get out. But yeah, I often wondered what the two guys were saying about me when I left the room.
You know, those holes might have looked like little eyes looking at you as you were trying to compose yourself and answer these important questions to get this job. But that is quite a story, Gordon. That is quite a story.
I still
Yeah.
remember it, and it's a long, long, long time ago, Kevin. So yeah, it obviously made an impact. One of the stories.
Well, this is then going to be a strange question, okay? What did you learn from that situation?
I think I learned from it to expect the unexpected and to kind of wise up, be professional. But I just couldn't help it. It's just one of those things. So yeah, expect the unexpected. That would be probably be the key takeaway from that one.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
absolutely. I completely agree with you.
we've
And
all heard
that's
stories in the past, I'm guessing, where I don't agree with it, like, but traps would have been set for people coming in for interviews, like bins with a trip over and stuff like that to see how they conduct themselves. I'm not fussed on that sort of stuff, but no, I think my key takeaway from that one was, Gordon, always expect the unexpected.
yeah. You know, I'd heard of an example of what you'd said about those sort of traps. And in one organization, they had a very what looked like an informal structure to their interview. They would take a walk around the building, ask questions as they were walking around, and then have a cup of tea and carry that around into the different departments as they're talking and chatting, which
Right.
is probably a really nice way of doing an interview because you're up and you're moving, and it really you can't perform or overperform when you're moving around. It's very, very difficult to do.
Yes.
But this particular organization, what they were looking for was people who thought about other people and thought about the person who put the rubbish in the bin right up to the CEO as being the same type of person. And they wanted everybody to be involved in sort of every aspect of the business. So their interview process, they watched what you did with that cup after you finished drinking from it. They watched if you wanted to bring that back into the room and
Yeah.
wash it, dry it, and put it away. So they're thinking that that is really a nice person to have because they're thinking about others
Right, of
and
course.
they're taking responsibility for their own stuff.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's
Very good.
weird, isn't it? It's a weird thing to do, and for someone to even go to that depths to think about that,
Yes.
That might be a really good organization to work for because they've given that process thought.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
know the type of person they want working for them. They know the values that that person needs to have, and they're actively searching for them, which is a wonderful, wonderful experience for everybody involved.
100%, Kevin. No, absolutely. No,
You
agree.
know? So
Agree.
Gordon, today has been absolutely fantastic. You've really opened my eyes to a very different world that I didn't realize was going on. You know, holy shoes and everything. And
Uh-huh.
there's been a couple of takeaways that I think we need to reiterate for the listeners to really understand. And it was the first one is don't exaggerate your answers. So don't over exaggerate any figures, because if you're pushed in a corner and you're asked a probing question, everything might just fall down around you. And then
Exactly.
once that question collapses, you've sort of lost that trust of the interviewer. From
Yeah,
there, it's very, very difficult to get back. I do recall reading a saying that said, if you're telling the truth, you don't have to really remember anything,
that's right. That's right. No, I heard that one myself.
you know,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
which I think is really relevant to this point. The second one was dig deep into the company and do your homework. You know, use the phrase lift the bonnet and look underneath. Really get stuck in and understand what it is, because
Mm.
it could save you a lot of time. It could save you a lot of time. It could save the interviewers a lot of time. You might find something on there you don't like.
And probably come back, to the wrong job move that I made, which I mentioned earlier in the interview. Yeah, I've often thought probably if I had dug a bit deeper into the culture of that organization, and I kind of would have probably known that's maybe not a fit for me, but
Mm.
it was more a case, I'm not going to conclude my career in the company that I was in at that time, and there was a big rush at that stage to get private sector managers into the public sector, and but probably if I'd done a little bit more digging, I probably wouldn't have ended up in the job. But as I said at the start, you know, really that what I learned in those 2 years from albeit a wrong job move was phenomenal.
Well, I think that speaks volumes to you as a person and how you've seen that experience.
Yeah,
You've seen that experience as a learning experience. It may not have been the experience you wanted, but you took what you wanted out of it. And
yeah,
that's a really huge takeaway for everybody.
yeah.
That was completely not planned, that one. And
Okay.
that is an amazing takeaway for everybody. But the third takeaway that I want everybody to take away is expect the unexpected. You just don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if you're going to sit in front of a glass table and there's going to be holy shoes in front of you.
That's right.
And to be honest, I don't think I would ever even expect that, which is which is very difficult to expect that unexpected. But I think there has to be almost that visualization of you walking into this organization, potentially something not going to plan, and how do you manage and deal with that? And
Yeah,
on the odd occasion, there is going to be a question about or around that sort of topic of something hasn't went to plan. How do you manage that? Well, I'm sitting in an interview and there's a glass desk and the person in front of me has holes in their shoes and I can see their socks. That is completely unexpected. Gordon, I think you feel that one. But you feel it with pride, I believe. I think that was a really good
did.
opportunity to work on that.
I did.
But
Right.
Gordon, thank you very much. And I believe our listeners will gain so much from your experiences today and the stories that you've told. And I really appreciate you coming on and spending some time with us.
A pleasure, Kevin. Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
For more details about our guest, or if you would like to be a guest, go to www.interviewskillscoach.co.uk/my-worst-interview-ever, or find us on Facebook or LinkedIn. And remember, on the other side of a successful interview is the life you deserve.